Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmerced.com, and in this video what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a mini full stack app using Express, MongoDB and Mongoose, Express React views, and a bunch of other stuff. So the goal is to see if I can get this done within an hour. It's not going to have full CRUD functionality. We're going to target just having create and read functionality. So I should be able to see a list of persons and add to the list of persons by the end of this exercise. So first what we're going to do is create a new project. So I'm going to create a new folder. Okay, and we're going to call it persons app. And I'm going to open this folder up in terminal. And I'm going to touch a server.js. I'm going to create a new npm project, npm init-y. And the reason why I'm doing the server.js first is that if there's already a JavaScript file in the folder when you do the npm init, then it's going to assume that that's your main file. If I do the npm init first, it's going to assume an index.js file, which is not what I'm going to create. So that's why I create the file first. Cool. And with that, I'm going to install all the libraries I anticipate using. So that's going to be npm install. I expect to use Express, Notamon. I'm going to be using, no, I don't need method override for this particular one. I do need React DOM. I need Express React views. This is going to be our view engine. It allows us to use React in the back end, because React is typically a front-end library. I need Mongoose so we can connect to our Mongo database. I also going to need dotenv so I can hide my Mongo URL. Okay, or just any other kind of environmental variables. I'll show you how that works in a second. Okay, and I think that should be good. So I'm going to let that install. You can always install more in a second. So while that installs, I'm going to set up my scripts. I always like to set up our two basic scripts. So although there's plenty of other ones you can set up, because it's all, oh, not server.js, package.json. So here's our scripts. I'm going to change this to dev. And this is going to be Notamon server.js. And then start will be that one, save. Aside from that, I'm just going to let that install. Okay, now on the server.js, we can start doing our boilerplate for our server. Const. So first we bring in the Express library. Const express equals require express. Then we create the app object. Const app equals express. Okay, I'm also bringing Mongoose while I'm at it. Const mongoose equals require mongoose .env, which actually that I don't need to put in a variable. That should just be const, no, not even, require .env, and I think it's just like .config. Let me just double check. I have a former project on here. Let's see here, .env config, good. Because what this does is that this basically tells your application to go look in your folder for a file called .env. That's what this library does. And then in this file, I need to create the, what did I do? I didn't do anything yet. New file called .env. Okay, and this file is where you can put any variables that you don't necessarily want to upload online. Why? Because they contain sensitive information, passwords, API keys, stuff you don't want the public seeing, because then they can misuse it. So I'm going to put in here, usually the variables you want in here are a variable like port. So we'll say port equals 3000. We're eventually going to have our Mongo URL. I'll just call it db URL. Okay, we'll come back to how to fill that in, and that's good for now. Okay, just know that later on when I get my URL, I'm going to plop it here. I'm not going to show you what it is because, you know, you don't want to expose that. But this is where you would put it, in this .env file. And you don't want this to be uploaded to GitHub. So that means you're going to want to make a new file called .gitignore, which tells Git which things to not upload to GitHub or to not commit to your Git repository. And generally the things you want there are node modules, because we don't need that, and your .env file. Those are sort of your at minimum. So then how does, when you upload it to your like server, how do you know what your environmental variables are? Generally, like if you're using something like Heroku, they'll have somewhere where you can redefine those variables on their servers, but the idea is that it's never in that public space. The server knows, but nobody else knows. That's another benefit of having certain code run server-side, because then the end user can't expect and find those environmental variables. While if I were to put a lot of this code in the front end, it exposes a lot of that information. You can't really hide information as well on the front end. Okay, save. So I got my .env file. I got my .ignore file. I'm gonna close those for a moment. And we need to bring in. Well, I might as well start setting up my middleware. So again, my middleware is what runs before all my routes, depending on what order you write your code in. So I'm going to write all my middleware before my routes, so that way every time a request comes into my server, all the middleware stuff happens first. Then it's going to go through my routes to figure out what to do. Okay, and middleware. First piece of middleware I want is going to be the URL encoded. So every piece of middleware usually uses this app.use function, which just means, hey, Express, use this with the request. So it just kind of passes in the request and does a thing. So I'm going to use express.url encoded. And then I have to pass object with options, which usually just means extended false. I'm pretty sure it's let me just double check. Here's middleware. Express your extended false. Good. So I want that first. Doesn't really matter for the most part what order it is, depending. App.use. What else do I want here? Oh, I need my static folder. Express.static. So what this does is say I'm gonna have a folder called public, which will serve static assets. Then I just need to set my view engine app. Actually, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create the engine first. App.engine. Okay, the name of the engine is called JSX. So we're creating a new view engine in Express, which will be called JSX. And this engine is the result of require Express React views. And so we're going to bring that library and really just need to use a certain function once, which is create engine. And there you go. So this says, hey, there's this new library, there's this new engine in Express called JSX. Now I want to set that engine. So app.set. We're going to say, hey, Express, you have an option called view engine. That's a part of your configurations. And we want you to set that view engine configuration to that JSX engine we just made. Cool. So that makes sure that every time we create a view, it uses our Express React views, which allows us to use Express in the backend. Cool. Looks like everything finished installing, so let me go take a look at my package.json. So again here, I see my list of all my dependencies, which is good. Okay, we want that because that way you don't have to send your node modules folder. When someone downloads your code, they can just hit npm install and it'll automatically download these files on their computer, which is good. Makes your code much more portable. Let's do the Mongoose code so we can connect to our database. database connection. First, I want to set up some of the variables up here. Const database URL is going to equal our variable from our environmental variables. So when you want to access that .env file, you have to use process.env. And notice I have to put this variable after this, because I have to have already brought in my .env file before I can actually use process.env. .env.db_URL, because that's what we put in our .env file. I'm going to do const port equals process.env.port. Okay. And then I always create this variable called db object. This is just an object we're going to want to pass into Mongo to just avoid getting a bunch of warnings every time Mongoose starts up. I have it right over here. I always forget this exact object. Here we go. Control C. What I would do is I would just pause the video to get all this. But basically, you create this object. It just turns on a bunch of stuff, turns off certain things, and it's going to get rid of all the warnings that Mongoose will have when it pops up. Not that it matters. You can survive without it, but it's nice not to get the warnings. Okay. So that should be pretty good. So here's our middleware. So now for our database connection. Okay. Now let me just take a look over here. Let's walk through it over here. Okay, see if there's anything else I forgot. So express, app, we did that. Required, env. We don't need the router at the moment. We're not going to be doing any crazy controllers. Method override, we're not going to be doing put or delete requests on our forms. That's fine, we'll get into that in a second. Not doing user authentication, so I don't need bcrypt or session right now. Good. Okay, so let's get to our database part. And then here's what I need next. I need to connect. Okay. Mongoose.connect. This is the line of code that actually connects to your database. Mongo.connect. Which we pass in our DB URL, which is what we're connecting to. Which again will end up being in our .env file. And all said and done. And then so again, we kind of define that right here, just so remember how this got there. And then we need our DB object, which will be our second parameter. That's just what gets rid of the warnings, DB object. And then this makes our database connection. So that connects to the database, which is good. That's really all you need there. I like to add this other stuff because it's useful. But we need to define this DB variable. So it means I already did that here. So right over here. Okay, so I'm going to do that up here as well. Okay, const db, which just what it is, it's a variable that keeps track of your connection. So mongoose.connection. So basically this db variable, or you can call it whatever you want, represents the status of your connection. And the reason why that's important is because we can create a bunch of functions that'll be triggered depending on the state of your database connection. And that's useful so that we know when we connect, when we don't. Okay, so the events we really care about are over here. So again, it's error, connected, disconnected, open. Okay, I'm just going to actually copy that for the most part. It's pretty good the way it's set up. Okay. I'll let you look at this for a second, but see, this just basically says when our connection is in a state of error, we'll console log the error. I'm going to delete this variable over here. And just make this Mongo connected. So when our database first gets connected, it's going to say Mongo connected. If our database is disconnected, then it's going to console.log Mongo disconnected. Again, this is just the second parameter is an argument or a callback, db.on. And then as long as our connection's open, or when a connection first becomes open, it will say connection made. Okay, so that's essentially that Mongo connected, then connection made when everything works out fine. Okay, cool. Then here we're going to have our routes. Okay, and we'll come back to that. And then here we'll have our app listener. This will be what triggers the server to listen for requests. Okay, which is going to be app.listen. Then we put in port. Okay, and then a callback that says console.log listening on port. Cool. And again, you just like having all those little like messages, that way you know your server's working when it kicks up. Cool. So the only thing I need to do is just put in my server URL, and I should be able to start up the server without any major errors. It won't be doing anything, but we'll be able to start it up. So let's go talk about Mongoose or Mongo. So I'm gonna head over to MongoDB. Okay, and I'm gonna walk through this whole process just to show you guys. So what you can do here is you can host this is called MongoDB Atlas, and MongoDB Atlas allows you, okay, to have sort of online hosted Mongo databases. And there's a free tier, which is nice. So you can create free databases. It's really not good enough for like a production project, but the free tier is good enough for you to do like little practice projects like this. Sign in. I'm gonna actually create a new account. Okay. Let's see here. I'll just put in test@alexmerced.com. Actually, no, I will use my account so that we can do with this whole email confirmation and all this stuff. Okay, so I'm just gonna sign in. Should be alexmerced@alexmerced.com. It's been a while. Yep. Okay, so let's log in. And this website can take a while to load. So basically, you can create as many projects as you want, and then each project's allowed to get one free database. So what we'll do is we'll build a new one just to kind of show everything from scratch. So you hit build a cluster, and you can pretty much accept all the defaults for free. So create a cluster for free one. And it'll generally choose the best defaults for you, unless you want to change the name of the cluster. Otherwise, I usually just keep the default cluster 0. Who cares? Doesn't really matter. So this creates a cluster for you. It takes about a few minutes for it to set up, so we'll do some other stuff while it sets up. Okay, so your cluster is being created. It should take about 1 to 3 minutes, and that's there. And then just so you're aware, it has some other cool services. Like there's like this new service from Mongo called Stitch. And what Stitch allows you to do is create, instead of you having to create your own backend like we are right now, where I'm creating a server that interacts with our Mongo database, it'll kind of do it for you. And then all you have to do is just basically call the data through an API that it builds for you, which is pretty cool. I haven't actually played around with it yet, but just so you know, that's there. That's a good thing to learn. It's a good sort of dipping your toe into the serverless world of nowadays. Okay, but see, that's being created, so we're going to give that some time. Okay, so let's create our first couple routes. And we really only need a few. Okay, first we're going to want our main page. Let me think of that. How do I want to handle that? Yeah, I'll do it the traditional way. Main page. App.get, and when you make a get request to the root, it then does this res. So again, if you've never used Express before, it's request response. That's what that stands for. It was a callback. Request has all the details about your request that came into the server. Res gives you a bunch of functions that you can use to respond to that request. First, I'm going to res.render. And we're going to go send it to a page called index, and we'll come back to that page. Save. Then we're going to create a form which you can add a new person, app.get. Actually, I'll put the form on the index page, but what I will do is create the route that allows to trigger the creation of a new person. Okay, so post slash okay brain rec res. Okay, it'll do some stuff, and then it's going to res dot redirect back to the root, which by default makes a GET request to that URL. So basically, we'll have the main page, it'll list people, you'll have a form which you can add a person, and whenever you add a person, it then makes a post request, hits this route, adds the person, then redirects you back to that. That's our website. Simple. Okay, now let's take a look at our cluster. Is it done? Yes, our cluster is all set to go. Okay, so now what you want to do is you want to connect to your cluster. Okay, and you're going to say get here, and here it gives you some different options. What we want to do is connect our application, and then we're going to get this URL. Okay, and then what you're going to want to do is go to your .env file and paste the URL. You just need to make sure that you put in your username and password right over here. Okay, so it would be like, let's say your username is Bob, this becomes Bob, and if your password is cheese, and this becomes cheese. Okay, it'll walk you through, but make sure you change this. Okay, you're not going to see me change it for confidentiality reasons, because I don't want you using my account. Okay, then here you can put the name of the database, so you can replace this with tests. So I'm going to replace it with projects. Okay, and then that's the database it'll use. So even if I haven't created any databases yet, it'll just create a database called projects for me, so I don't have to worry about that part. So I'm going to pause this, get my URL set up, and I'll be right back. Okay, so that's all set up. So my .env file is all set up. Won't show it to you, but you just have to believe me. Hopefully you did the same thing and set up yours. But now we can actually test out our server. So again, we created a script, a dev script in our package.json. So see, dev node server.js. So the way you use that is you type in npm run, and you put the name of the script, dev. Okay, so see, node starts. My server kicked up, listening on port 3000, and now let's just wait for it to connect to Mongo. Waiting, and there it is. It's connected to our database. Good. It's connected to our database. Now the only problem is our app doesn't really do anything yet. So what we're going to do is I'm going to just shut off the server for a while, because it'll restart automatically, but I just don't want it like going nuts, just bothering Mongo while I get this basic stuff set up. Now what we need is a schema. Usually I would do this in a different file, but this is a really quick project, so I'm going to do this here. Okay. And what a schema is, it acts kind of like a filter. It says this is the information we're going to be putting into this particular collection. Think of it as a table in Mongo. So we're going to define sort of where we're going to store it and how that data should look like going in and out. So it acts as like a filter. When we pull data out, it only pulls out this data. When we put data in, it only puts in this data. It basically defines how Mongoose is going to interact with Mongo, because Mongo really has no rules. It just lets you do what you want. So Mongoose gives you a little structure to work with. So my schema, okay. So what I want is to destructure a few things from Mongoose. So let me double check what those things are. Where is my, here it is. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to go into my schema folder for this old project. Okay, and this is my unit 2 evil project if you want to look at this particular code. And I'm going to go into models. Let's see here. Events, doesn't really matter which one. Just want to look at this. Okay, I need the schema and I need model. Okay, those are the two things I need the structure out of there. Okay, so schema, model. I'm going to take that out of Mongoose so I can use them standalone. Just makes life easier. Okay, neat. Okay, so I got those two variables available to me. Now I need to create a new schema. So we're going to say const person schema equals a new instance of schema. And then we need to pass in a object that just basically defines the schema, which is going to be pretty straightforward. We're going to just say name, which will be a string, and age, which will be a number. Okay, so that's our schema. You can do all sorts of really more interesting stuff with your schema, but again, this is just simple, so I'm just saying, hey, we have a name property and an age property. One's a string, one's a number. Boop. There's my schema. I want timestamps, so second argument is a config object, and here I'm going to just put timestamps equals true. Okay, let me just make sure I set that up right here. Timestamps. Well, that one I don't have timestamps in. Okay, but that's fine. That should be fine. And then, so this defines the schema, but the schema is just an object. I need to tell it when to use the schema. So what I have to do is do const person. So anytime I interact with this person variable, what it is, it's the result of model. And what model does, it says, going forward, in whatever database you connected to, which was the person database I named in the URL, I want you to create a collection called, we'll say, person. And it'll automatically add an S to it for some reason. So it'll become persons. And this person collection, the information that goes in and out of it will be based on the person schema. And there you go. And there I go. Now I have my model object that I can use to actually do stuff in the database. Okay, so that's all this does. Okay, so again, I'm using the schema constructor because to create a new schema object, and I'm using the model function that are inside Mongoose. Schema creates the object, which acts as the filter, and then the model function allows me to connect that filter, that model, that schema, to a particular collection in my Mongo database. Cool, so that's done. So now I can actually go get data. Okay, so I can go here and I can use that person object we created right here and start like looking for data inside of it. So I'm gonna do person dot find, and I'm just gonna pass in an empty object. That object represents sort of your filter. Okay, like what I could actually sit there and put in, like, you know, look for, and I'll put like name and Bob, and I'll look for any documents that have Bob as a name. But I'm not looking for anything in particular. So by just keeping it empty, I'm saying, hey, give me everything. Okay, let me actually just take a look at examples of ones I've done in the past. That would be in my controllers folder. Okay, let me just think here. I just want to double check something. Fine. Where's my... Fine. Which one is this? This is event controller. Okay, API endpoint. Here we go. Events.find. Yep. Okay. This one's a little bit more complicated because basically I had them attached to a username, so I wanted to look for all the different events that were under a particular username. So that's why that's like that. So you can see, like, hey, I'm filtering it, and then you have your callback. So res.find, I'm going to find everything, and then I'm going to have my callback. My callback basically is what I find. Okay, so you can see here, the way it works is you have error then data. So if this function failed, it'll send you back an error. If it succeeds, it's going to send you back data. Okay, usually you want to call it something that's semantic. So I'm going to say error, and then we're going to get back persons. right? Because it's basically, if it succeeded, it's going to give us back a list of persons. And in that situation is when I want to do the res.render. Okay, res.render, and then we're going to send in an object that includes all the persons. Okay, over there to index. Cool. Then we're going to want to create. So in this route, so it'd be person dot create. Let me just double check. I'm pretty sure it's person dot create. So for my create route, here's the post. Yeah, events dot create. Yep. So in the basic, we're gonna get it from a form, so it's just gonna be part of our body. So it would be rec.body is what we're submitting in there to create the new record or document, and then we have our callback just like before. Error, and then what we get back is a individual person, and then whatever, I don't want to do anything from there other than just redirect me back to here. I would do a little bit more stuff if I was doing like a single page application, because I have to go update the DOM, but here it's just simple. So essentially the loop is, this will take us to the main page, the main route. There'll be a list of persons, a form. I fill out the form, I hit the button, it hits this route, which creates a new person in the database, and then sends me back to the main page, which will then pull back the new list, show it on the screen. Cool. So that's easy peasy. Now we just need to create the pages. So I'm going to create a folder called views, new folder called views. I also might as well create public for any static assets we may need before the end of this video. New file, although now that I think about it, I don't think we're going to need them, but just in case. I'm going to go into views, new file, index.jsx. And another, well, actually that's it. Our index.jsx should do everything. Okay, so if you've never used React before, it's pretty straightforward. You always kind of have to bring in React. So usually when you're doing on the front end, you'll use like words like import, export, but we're in the Node server environment, so it's const react equals, you know, require React. And let me think here. Anything else I want to do there? No, that's pretty good. And then I'm going to do this as a functional component. So const index equals props. Now all that information that we sent over, all our persons, will be hidden in this props object. So that's why I'm going to refer to it. And actually, to be even fancier, since I know persons is the only thing I really want out of this props object, I'm just going to destructure that right from the get-go. Okay, and that's always just a neat trick. It just makes writing your function a little bit easier, because I won't have to write props.persons. I can just write persons, because I'm destructuring it straight out of my parameter list, because I know this object is going to get passed into my function. And then here we just return some JSX. Okay. I'm going to use might as well just use a body tag, because I'm really not going to use any other components for this one. At the top of the page, there's going to be a UL. Okay, a UL, and inside that UL, we're going to create our LIs. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to take that persons, we're going to map over it. Each one's going to have a value and index, because we're using map, which basically loops over the array and makes a new array out of the return value of the function that I pass in. So each time around, what I want it to do is return to me an LI with the key of index. And inside each li is the person's name, so it'll be the value, because it's each individual person, value.name, who is value.age. Okay, that's how you interpolate when you're using JSX. You use the curly brackets. So this will loop over a list of persons and interject an li for each one. Anything else I want to do there? I think that's pretty good. Then we create the form, which will just basically point to the root and as a post route. And then this form will just have two inputs. Input. Actually, let me use Emmet to do this because it's fun. Input. Okay. Type equals text. Name equals name. And let's see if that all worked. Yes. And then I'll put a placeholder in there so that way you can see what it is. Placeholder. I always like to do the placeholder instead of putting like a field name. Name. Okay. I'll just copy and paste this a few times. Boop. That's going to be for the age. And so this one's going to be a number type field. Then we'll have age as a placeholder. Age. Okay, and then this is the submit button. All this really needs is a value. Create. And that should do it, because what's basically what happens is that when you click the submit button, it's going to take this data, submit the post request here. It does all the headers, all that fun stuff, so I don't have to think about it. I have the middleware for URL encoded to read that form data. So it'll be in my rec.body. So at this point, I think we're done. Okay, hey, so we did 37 minutes, not bad. So let's see here, persons.app. Let's run the dev server and see if this all works. So that's all kicking up, kicking up, kicking up. Okay, good, we're connected to our database. Now let's check out localhost 3000. Let's see here. Oh, there's a problem. Let's see here. No default engine was specified, no extension was provided at new engine. Okay, so it's complaining about my middleware. Okay. Yep. Okay, I guess I do need to do this in the particular order I've done it in the past. Cut. So let's see here. So I guess that needs to be in that order. You need to set the view engine first. Okay. Let's see here. I saved it, so let's see if it works. Do I get any errors? No. So let's go to localhost again. Still not happy. Why is that? Let's take a look at my code. Res.render index. What's really error? Well, now we have no default engine was specified at new view, but we did. Right there, app.set view engine.jsx. Next require express react views dot create engine. Function. Interesting. At new view express. Maybe I set it up wrong. So let's go take a look at go look up express react views. and make sure that I set it up right. I'm going to include this line, but that shouldn't really be the reason why, but let's add it just in case. Copy view engine JSX. Yeah, that's pretty much what I did. So let's go back up here. View engine JSX. So the only thing that is different is this line, which just basically specifies the views folder, which is the default. So, but you know, let's give it a shot. Connection made. And then I hit refresh. Nope, still not liking it. Did I install the library? Express React views. Yeah, it's there. There's React. There's React. Oh, I know what I did. Const React. I forgot to have to export the actual view. Module.exports index. Save. And let me actually just save the server.js just to kickstart the server, because every time I save a JS file, it'll restart the server. So there it's saving. Let's see if that does the trick. Nope, it's still complaining about something else. No default engine was specified and no extension was provided. But we do. It's right there. No view engine. I must have typed something wrong. So I'm just going to copy this. I'm not going to fight it. I'm not going to fight with you, computer. Copy. Okay. So supposedly something changed in there. That index. Views, yeah. Which is what it says here. So it should be working now. Okay, that looks different, so that's good. We're waiting for localhost. Well, it shouldn't take that long to render the page, so let's take a look down here. But no, it's working. So let's see here. I'll type hit enter again. That server's being slow. Oh, because it's still connected to Mongo, that's why. Should give it a second to connect to Mongo. Here, I'm going to just close this, run it again. Wait for it to connect to Mongo. You know, it will eventually, because it's done it before. We tested that out earlier, which is why it's important to test things out. But why it's taking so long today is a different story. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to move the database stuff above my middleware. I have a feeling that's part of the issue. I think it needs to connect to the database before all the middleware kicks in. So let's do that. Save. Let it restart. Okay, good. That's working. Now let's see here. Localhost 3000. Let's refresh. Waiting for the server. And finally, good. So let's first add me, Alex Merced, age 34. I submit That should make a change to Mongo in there. Yeah, so now it's actually adding to the database. How do we know it's adding to the database? Well, let's just add one more. Bob, age 60. We can just go over to MongoDB Atlas and double check. mongodb.com. Sign in. So you make me sign in all over again. Yep. Alex Merced. So many email addresses. Yeah, so we have a working application with a back end and a front end that's doing its thing. So we can go in here the collection so we can see what's inside the database. And see, it created a database called projects with a collection called people, which has two objects, Alex 34, Bob 60, and I can actually create a new one right here. So we'll just say name Steve, age 55. I'll insert that. I guess I want to make sure it's a number. I guess I'll just use the int32. Inserting document, and there it is, Steve 55. So I inserted the data that there. Now if I go over here and refresh, Steve 55 is there because it's pulling it from the database. So that is neat. We did it. We created the thing. Now I can go style it and make it pretty, but that wasn't the point. Cool. So that's it. So basically what we did is we set up a project, we created some views, we created a model, we connected them, we set up our controllers, so that way you can get to the route and create stuff and work with the database straight from your front end. So there you go. That's many full stack applications. The only difference is if we wanted to make this like a single page application, instead of working with forms, we would work with JSON data, and it would all be from like one file. Yeah, that's that.